I'm going to be giving tips out. That's a surprise here. It's a handicapping seminar, just changed. So, no, I'm probably the luckiest person that you spoke to, that you heard speak today, because randomly, I wasn't actually supposed to be here today. Brad Weisbord was, but he wasn't able to make it. So Bill and Terry, who have both been very good to me in my career, were ahead of me. And listening to them, I learned some stuff that I didn't even know, and I work with them on a daily basis. And Terrence was there for probably one of my greatest screw-ups of all time. I bought a horse for $1,450,000 that has yet to really do anything exciting. So the three of them have all been part of my life in some way. But I grew up in a racing family. It's well documented. What I would bring up is Sunday silence, because he kind of came up reoccurringly through some of the talks today. And Pat Valenzuela, my father, basically took him in, raised him up when he was about 16. My mother was like a mother to him. I didn't realize Patrick wasn't my brother until I was old enough to understand that he was Hispanic and I was not. So, he still to this day calls me bro. So when you grow up in a horse racing household, or maybe any household that has golf, whatever sport it is, and you get forced on you a little bit, at least I was revolted from it. My grandmother, who was the matriarch of our family, did not have a horse background but liked to bet on them. She brought my aunts and my mother around a racetrack. That's how my mother met my father, Jerry. And then she got into it. So now they're all in it. Here comes Patrick. And it is 1989, and they left to come here to Louisville for the Derby with Sunday Silence. My grandma was like, "Oh, you got to watch the race." I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Well, I snuck in my bedroom, and I put it on. I'd never heard my old Kentucky home. I'd never seen the whole pageantry that goes with it. And I remember sitting on my bed watching it, and I was hooked from there. Anybody knows me, I'm not like, even as a kid, I wasn't like a crier or anything. I'm bawling as they're playing my old Kentucky home. And the race hasn't even run yet. Now Sunday Silence wins, and I remember the feeling I got. It changed my life. Literally, when you think of a moment that changes your life, that was it for me. So from there, my parents came home from Louisville, from the Derby, and I said, I want to go to work at the racetrack. Well, one of my father's best friends was Laz Barrera, who needs no introduction. And he had a thick Cuban accent. He said, "David, I will teach you to win the Triple Crown." And I said, "Laz, I want to win two." He said, "The first one I will teach you. The next one is on your own." And so I was like, great, I'm going to go work for Laz. And a sad day, he passed away. Very unexpectedly, Laz, I think he had a heart attack. So Umberto Ascanio, who was Bobby's long time main assistant, knocked on the door a few days later. He said, "Your mother said you're coming with me." And I went to work for Bobby, and it was another life-changing moment for me, because when I went there, I got to see all the horses I'd been reading about in the Blood Horse and hearing about at the dinner table and getting to work with them. And, from there, now I'm standing here back in Louisville giving a talk about what's happened. And like, I pinch myself how lucky I have been. What does that mean on finding the next great horse? Well, I think Sunday Silence for me was one of the best horses we've seen race in a long time, maybe a little even underrated. So from that point, you start looking, I did anyway, on how to figure out how do you find that horse for yourself or your clients. Somebody was asking me, well, what do you look for in these yearlings? I basically took everything I learned at the racetrack, which was the greatest gift I had, the greatest advantage I have today. I worked with so many good horses. And you see what they look like and what the design of them is when they're grown up and they're running in the Hollywood Gold Cup, or they're running in the Matriarch, or whatever Breeders' Cup races and everything we had. I mean, Bobby had a murderer's row when I was there. Bertrando was there, Tussaud was there, Marquetry was there. They were horses that ended up meaning a lot to me and served as my basis for everything I do today. When I go to the sales and you're looking around, I'm looking for what those horses had in these yearlings. Bo Bramagen, who's in the crowd today, he's got a filly running in the turf juvenile. And I can tell you, when she walked out of a stall, I saw her put her ears up, how she looked, and he was very fortunate to get her bought. That horse, I knew she had it because I'd seen a ton of fillies we had over the years. We had a filly called Ventura that Judmont had. She is the image of her. And you see that and you try to put it together with what we're looking for in the sales. And oftentimes you see a horse and you know if it has a little luck, it doesn't get hurt, you're going to hear about it and read about it on Saturdays or Sundays. And that is what I took from the racetrack. So everybody asks about Zenyatta. I'll tell the obligatory Zenyatta story. When we were going through the barns, when I work for trainers or owners, we try to set up a plan. Trainers are like coaches. You know, you think about the kind of players that John Calipari recruits to Kentucky. Certain trainers want a certain type of horse. So John Sheriff's is a guy that he's not looking for a little 15-2 sprinter-looking horse. He likes the bigger, stretchier, the Giacomos, the Manistiques. He had his type is a bigger, framey, leggy horse. So I was obviously working for my family, and I'm going through there, and out came Zenyatta, who was hip 703. And I just said, this is a John horse. This is right here, it's a John horse. So we go, and we're having our discussions, and we're going through, and everybody went and agreed this is a horse we want to buy. We send the veterinarian over, vet's out, no problem. She had a skin disease on her, which at the end of the day, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 1 of an issue. Like a fungus, just a breakout. It happens when horses come from their farms to the sale. You can get on a brush. The guys are grooming different horses. So that was her biggest knock, really. And so we're talking about it. Okay, fine. We even said, if we get her, we'll give her, there's an antihistamine shot you can give them. I said, if we buy her, we'll give her the shot, and it'll take care of itself by the time she gets home. Okay. So in the back ring, my parents and I are standing there, and Mr. Moss is there, and we're watching Zenyatta walk around the parade area, or the yearling that will be Zenyatta walk around there. And we always set the budget in the back. So Jerry says, well, what do you think for this one? I said, $250, $300, And my mom's like, at least. Okay, no problem. So I walk up, and I bid. I'm very predictable. I bid in the same spot. I'm superstitious. If I'm betting, I wear a shirt with a pocket. If I get beat in a race, that pair of underwear is gone. So, I get the sale. I bid in the same spot because that's my spot. So I go and I stand there, and I'm bidding, and it stops at $60,000. The bid's to me. Well, the day before, there's a Hall of Fame trainer, won multiple derbies. He bought the wrong horse for a guy that used to coach in this city for about $500,000. And I remember hearing that story, and I was like, oh my gosh, could that ever happen to me? So now I'm sitting here thinking, did I buy the wrong horse because I'm that far off? Hammer falls, the guy's bringing me the ticket. Well, I do kind of a runner over where they walk down, and she has a very distinctive head even as a yearling. I'm like, I got the right horse. My mother looked at me like, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. I was very excited. I was very excited about this. So whenever I finally told her why I did, I thought I bought the wrong horse, And she ended up being Zenyatta, so that's that with her. That is an example of finding a big horse through a process. I like to tell the story of Stellar Wind because I ended up getting her bought even despite my own best efforts. I needed some help. So I like to buy horses by stallions that I have some feeling about. I like to say I play the stallions like a stock market. And we had Curlin at Lane's End. And my mother is a big influence on my life because if you've ever met my mother, she tells you her opinion and you will know what it is. And I listen. She's a very smart woman, and she's right often. So she said, Dave, you need all the Curlins you can get. I said, all right. So we get these reports, and it shows the winners by Curlin every day. And I see one, so I watched the video, and I said, wow, this filly won very nicely, second start at Laurel. So I get my assistant to get me all the paperwork, the guy's name, phone number, the pedigree, the chart, the rags, everything. I'm trying to call him. Won't answer me. I called him like 3 times in a row, and one time I know it rang, and I think he just hit the don't answer button. So I'm like, well, that's weird. Next day I go, I'm trying to call him again. Won't answer. Well, Mike Klein, who's a general manager at Lane's End Farm, that has outlived some of the trees on the farm, having been there so long, his ex-wife still works on the farm and does some things. And she had been telling Mike for about a day, I got to talk to David, I got to talk to David. Mike says, leave David alone, don't bother David. Well, Mike had left to go on a hunting trip. And in walks Paula, and she's standing in the door, and she says, David, there's this horse you have to buy. I said, okay, what's it buy? Curlin. Ears go up. Huh? Curlin. Where's it at? Laurel. I said, is it Stellar Wind? She said, yes. I said, call that man right now. She knew the trainer. So she calls him up in the door. Hey, Don, David says he'll take the horse. I said, well, what's the price? And she said, he gave me the number. I said, yeah, it's done, no problem. Send the x-rays here. We get it all worked out. And I got in the car, and I called John Sadler. I said, I just had a guy email you the x-rays on a filly. I'm going to Louisville to catch the evening plane to Laurel, and I hope the vet reads the x-rays by the time I get to the airport to get on the plane. And John says, okay, sounds good, how much? And I told him, he said, yeah, no problem, we'll bill it off. Call Mr. Horonis if she like her, and we'll get it done. And I could have called this man 100 times myself, and pretty much did, and never got a response. And yet fate brings somebody into the office that was able to help me get it done, and it ended up being Stellar Wind. So, you know, you can have all the plans you want and everything else, but sometimes there's this element of luck, whether it's getting lucky meeting the right people, getting lucky that the horse, you know, that you wanted to buy, you got outbid on, so you get the next one, or just somebody helps you make a connection that maybe you couldn't have made on your own. And that's been kind of the story of my life. I've been very lucky in this whole business the whole time, and with the people I've been around, people I've met, and what I've got to experience, I'm really blessed, and I hope that continues this weekend. So.
I guess does anybody have any questions for David before we kind of wrap things up here? Any questions for David? Yes, sir.
When did you first see Zenyatta do that incredible walk that she used to perform as she was going around the paddock?
Terrence is asking about Zenyatta and her prancing and her dancing.
You know, really, that came when she went out to John. And I think I've heard him explain it to me once or twice, if I'm not mistaken, that it was more how he felt she dealt with her. It's like her pre-race, you know, her pre-game activity. You know, somebody listens to music, or, you know, somebody gets their own way. That was how she dealt with the pressure of racing. And it's pretty interesting because she'll still do it now. Every once in a while when somebody brings her in, she struts.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. My question would be, is that everyone knew she was great, but there was that West Coast, East Coast rivalry with Zenyatta and Rachel, right? It existed. And it did seem like, for the most part, if you lived east of the Mississippi or Rachel, and in west, you were a Zenyatta fan. And some of the East Coast, I think, people and writers and fans that knew she was great, I think they really thought she was, after she lost to Blame, I think some of those individuals gained more respect for her in defeat, for what she did in that race to come up so short, the guts that she put on display. Then they had respect for her when she was going through all that win streak. Did you find that also after that race in which she lost? Her stature almost escalated.
I couldn't agree with that statement more. I think if you can become more of a legend in defeat, I can't think of another scenario where I've seen that happen. And in her race, what she did in her loss to Blame here was, in my opinion, one of the greatest races we've seen run in American turf history. A lot of horses, and this is another thing John would always say to me, a horse can have a quarter-mile kick, a horse can have, you know, a 3/8 kick. Zenyatta had like this half-a-mile kick, and if you watch what she did here, she basically sprinted 3/4 of a mile. Once Mike kind of got her back into the race, she started her move and never stopped and picked up momentum. And you know, she kind of, when she drifted in, it's almost like if she would have stayed out, Blame wouldn't have seen her. She might have got there. But what she did was absolutely amazing, and I can't think of a more incredible performance, win or lose, in racing that I've seen in my lifetime, and in sport. I mean, I love the game. I'm a fan above everything else. But what she did was absolutely amazing. And I'll add one other thing that never gets said about her. Because we were in the era of synthetics, which I think was a dark era in racing, quite frankly, she was a better horse on the dirt. And
You proved it at Oaklawn,
Yep.
right? In the apple blossom.
Yep. And if we, we're Californians, and I think they stayed there a lot of times because they felt they owed it to California racing. But I think, John brought her here for the, on Derby Day. I wonder if it was the year Smarty Jones won. Does that sound right? Okay. It was very muddy. Lionheart was second, whatever year that was. John had brought her here for a race on Derby Day, and that was going to be her debut that year. And if it had been a dry track, she would have run here. But it was muddy, and it wasn't the right thing to do to bring her back at that stage, so I took her back. We shipped all the way here. I was in the Campbell House, or one of those places, or what's the Galt House, thank you. And John called up and said, we're scratching. He put her on a plane and sent her home. The thing about Zenyatta that gets lost with all of her effort is that she was a better horse on the dirt.
Any other questions for David? Oh, and the other thing about that is I felt so bad because Mike Smith, I think we all agree, is as good a money rider as there's ever been. I mean, what is he, 19% Breeders' Cup for his career based on over 120? I mean, it's mind-boggling. If you're 19% at an individual meeting, that's good. 19% Breeders' Cup based on 100 and something starters. It's amazing. He felt so awful after that race. I mean, he's so self-effacing. He's blamed himself. I felt horrible for Mike after that race.
I felt very bad for him, and I will say I felt bad for me because I was second in the BCBC. And so one of my goals besides winning a Derby is to win the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. I take great pride in the fact that I am a horse player. I think if
you're in this weekend, you're playing?
Oh, yeah.
You're in, okay.
Yeah.
Any bonus money or just
No, I'm going my own cash.
Okay.
I didn't win anything going in, but I was second going into the Classic. And I said, well, my mom or one of my buddies like, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, how do I not go all in on Zenyatta? I mean, it seems like a pretty 5-2. I'll take it. And we all know what happened after that. My mom's about a month later.
Patrick McGooey won the whole thing,
yep.
Right? From New Orleans.
I
digress. I'm sorry.
My mother said, how much that nose cost you? I said, you don't want to know. How much that cost you? You don't want to know. Finally, I told her about $500,000, and she said, oh, you're right, I didn't want to know. So, but
it's only money, David.
It's only money. We'll make some more tomorrow.
All right, is that any other questions? No? Well, that concludes this session, Finding the Next Big Horse. I'd like to